Could the Dallas Cowboys make a trade for Brandin Cooks to shore up their wide receiver room? And it's a mock draft Monday on this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out at McCoolBCB. Landon, we talked about trading for a wide receiver last week for the Cowboys. If you don't absolutely love the first round, or excuse me, the day 2 and day 3 receivers, would Brandin Cooks do anything for you?
Yeah, actually, Brandin Cooks is a name that I've kind of been, thinking about in a while. I mean, just because it feels like he's constantly on the move. He's constantly available. Every season he's trading teams. And he's one of these rare, very rare kind of cases where everywhere he goes, he's productive, right? At the same time, everywhere he goes, he's constantly being kind of always on the trade market, right? I do think that his skill set kind of matches what the Cowboys probably need, right? Someone who can be a real field stretcher. He still has incredible speed. He can still threaten teams down the field. And I think he's good with the ball in his hands. The question is about the price and if the Cowboys are willing to kind of make that trade for that. And it's not just the trade price, but it's also the contract numbers.
Yes.
And I'm assuming he's going to want a new contract. So those are all things to consider there.
All right. So let's first start with why we're even talking about trading for a receiver. You and I did a mock draft simulation on, I believe that was Friday, right?
Yep.
And we took an offensive lineman in round 1. I believe it was Zion Johnson, which we liked a lot. We are big fans of Zion. It would be a great fit for the Cowboys. Instantly, fix the left guard spot. You get into rounds 2 and 3, and the names at receiver aren't great, right? And a lot of those guys have big flaws, and some of them might not be able to play right away. If the Cowboys do go offensive line in round 1, maybe they'd be open to grabbing a veteran receiver. And we're starting to hear some names floated out there that would make sense trade-wise. Devontae Parker got traded on, I believe that was Saturday. The next guy that could be on the block is Brandin Cooks. And our guy, Mike Fisher, at Texans SI, basically said the price the Texans are looking for is a second-round pick. Does that feel right to you? Does it feel too expensive?
I think that feels about right. I mean, he's it may be a little bit expensive, but I think that's that's what giving up a guy who I think had something like 1,200 yards receiving last year or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, he consistently has like 1,100, 1,200 yards receiving. I think that considering that, you're going to lose opportunity costs in getting a young receiver at that spot if you're trading your second round pick. So there is some opportunity cost lost in not getting a 23-year-old wide receiver who you think can help you long term at a cheap deal. But I also think that there are ways to do this without losing that opportunity cost. I think, if the Cowboys get to 24 and they've got both of those guards on the board, several other guys that they like, they should consider, instead of giving away their second round pick, seeing if Houston wants to come up to 24, seeing if the value and the difference is, and I haven't checked this, but see if the value and the difference between those picks is equivalent to a second round pick. And then that way you move down a little bit. I think Houston will probably talk like 34. I'm doing this completely without.
Yeah, I got it. I'll pull it up right here. So Houston's first pick in the second round is 37 and the Cowboys pick at 24. And the difference in spots is it's about 200 points, which is equivalent to like a early second round pick. Or sorry, early third round pick.
So maybe you do that. Maybe you throw in a sweetener, right, to kind of make it a little bit more palatable. And then what you do is you get all the way back it's far back, right? It's still top 5 picks in the second round. You're trading out of the first round. If you're okay with that, that way you could potentially get an interior offensive lineman that you like. I think still there. And you get someone like Brandin Cooks, and then you still keep your 56th pick. So there are many different ways to do this. That certainly is not the only way to do that, but I think that there's lots of times when I get into these draft simulations where you get to 24 and there's so many things to pick. There's just so many guys available that you like, right? Mm-hmm. A small trade back would kind of help you get what you need as far as a player. And without losing, hopefully, too much. Those 13 picks are going to be perilous, but without losing too much of what you were hoping to get in round one, on a second round contract.
Part of the reason why, if the Cowboys ultimately just came down to a second round pick, and that was the deal, that I'm okay with it, is when you look at the history of receivers drafted, like over the last decade, between picks like 50 and 80. And the names aren't great, Landon. Like I'm just going to run through the last few guys that have been drafted: Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell, Terrace Marshall, Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, McCool Hardman, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Paris Campbell, Andy Isabella. We did have DK Metcalf drafted at 64. Jalen Hurd, Anthony Miller, James Washington, DJ Chark, Taywan Taylor, Tyler Boyd. I mean, more often than not, you're getting a bad player there. And as much as people want to talk about how you can find receivers everywhere, a lot of times the best guys are all gone inside the top 40 or so picks.
Well, yeah, honestly, I just think that the value at 56 for the wide receivers that you're going to be getting is not going to be good.
No, other positions you can find stuff, right? If you need a linebacker, that's a great spot to grab one, just not a receiver.
Yeah, I feel like the wide receivers that seemingly are going to be available there is kind of just past the point where you feel comfortable, like where the wide receivers that you're going to get are going to be able to kind of come in and do something right away. I mean, I think the quality of what you're talking about are the kind of the kid from South Alabama, some of these other kind of more specific role folks. So I think you're just outside of striking range from someone that you feel like can come in and contribute right away. Or at least at the level that you want, right? So that's another reason why if it's just about trading 56 straight up, I think I can be convinced as well that might be something that the Cowboys should consider.
Now, just really quickly before we move on, the contract. He has 1 year left on his deal. I believe the base salary is $12.5 million, which it's not bad. Honestly, that's not bad. The idea, I'm sure, would be to give him a contract extension and maybe lower that cap number this year and whatever. But he's been really productive over the last however many years. So since 2015, he's at like 7,600 yards, 45 touchdowns.
Have you ever seen a career like this before? That's the thing that's fascinating to me about this guy.
Four different teams.
I don't think I've ever heard of a guy that's been in a career, maybe at running back, but not at wide receiver, where he goes from team to team. And it's almost, if it's not every year, it's like every other year at the very minimum.
Every 2 years, basically.
Yeah. And basically just produces constantly. And so it's a weird thing where he's constantly available for trade, but while also constantly producing. It's a very odd phenomenon.
I think it's partly like he's got elite speed, and that's just hard to find, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't really profile as like a number one go-to receiver that you're going to force feed the ball to.
Yeah.
But he's very productive and efficient. So he ends up having this very tradable contract, and if you have him in the right offense, he makes a lot of sense. Like if you had Michael Thomas and Brandin Cooks, it's a perfect pairing, right? If you had CeeDee Lamb and Brandin Cooks, it might be a perfect pairing, especially once you get Michael Gallup back. Can you afford to rent a guy for, let's say, 3 years? Like if the Cowboys wanted to give him a 2-year contract extension, I really don't see why not. He's only 28 years old. He's still good.
For goodness sakes, in 2 years from now, we'll be trading him away for another second round pick. He'll go on to his tour for the all 32 teams. It's like, I don't know. It feels like you could easily just turn around and trade him, just like you turned around and traded for him.
Now the only concern here is some like concussion stuff. But to his credit, he's missed, I believe, 4 games since 2015. So he plays a majority of the time
and produces.
How do you think he would fit in this offense?
I think it'd be a great fit. I mean, I think you automatically have a guy that's a field stretcher. He can play on the outside. He can play on the inside. I think, he kind of opens, makes the field open vertically, so you can have guys like CD operate underneath a lot cleaner. I think that he has a much more defined skill set and more, varied skill set than a lot of the other wide receivers you have on your roster, which is good. And I think that, like you said, he's not like the wide receiver that you're building your team around, but he's a 1B. He's a guy that you definitely are going to use a lot. You're going to target a lot, and he's going to help provide for the other guys in your team because of his speed. So I think it's a very natural fit. You'll find ways to get him the ball. You'll find ways to get him the ball on the move, whether it's short, passes across the middle, whether it's jet sweeps, obviously the stuff down the field. He has a lot of the kind of skills that you are looking for in the kind of gadget player that, might be eventually your third wide receiver if you were to draft this guy, except that he's a skilled wide receiver as well. So you can also put him out in route and kind of have him fill that role as well.
I've got one more question I want to ask you about Brandin Cooks, Landon, but let's do that after we come back from our break, because I want to tell you guys about Athletic Greens. I've been on Athletic Greens for the last, I think, 3 weeks or so, and I love it. It has a very mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to having every single morning before I have my coffee. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins and minerals to help start your day off right. It costs less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. In fact, it's actually cheaper than just going out and buying all the supplements yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially with us heading into flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every single day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements. One scoop every day. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We also want to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and sports info. Find out all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Landon, last question about Brandin Cooks.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a trade that you do now, or do you wait until after the first night of the draft?
Well, I think that this is something that you need to decide whether you want to do now, because I think if you want to keep things open for the option of potentially trading back from 24, as opposed to giving away a 56, I think that is something you should probably decide whether you want to do up front. And then there needs to be a conversation on how you want to actually pay for that. Like, do you just want to give up 56 straight up? If that's the case, then yes, then I think you could wait until day one is over to confirm that you didn't go through the draft and have someone like it's tough, because you almost want to wait until you get to 24, right? Like, maybe you set up the deal with Houston, and at the very least you wait till 24, see if a wide receiver falls to you that you potentially want to draft at 24. If that doesn't be the case, but you still have the guys you want, you feel comfortable, you can do it then. Or you could just decide to bypass that whole route and say, look, let's see what happens at 24. If we get the guard we like, then maybe what we do is we turn around and execute the trade at the end of the night, so that when day 2 starts, we've secured our receiver, and we've given up our 56 to Houston.
The reason why I'm okay doing it before the draft would be, I don't think there's going to be any receiver that falls to you that's suddenly going to make you regret doing that trade, right? Like, if Treylon Burks is there, it's not going to be like, oh man, it's too bad we did that Brandin Cooks trade because Burks is still there. I don't know. There's nobody in this class that makes me feel like CeeDee Lamb is falling to you at 24. You know,
What about Williams?
can we have 2 hurt receivers going into the same training camp?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, you can. Is it ideal?
It's a long look. It's a long game. You know, honestly, like I don't think that you should poo-poo drafting a guy like Jameson Williams because he may be a little bit late to one training camp. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that's to me is I'm taking the risk on that. Honestly, if that level of talent falls to me now. Ojabo is a different story, right? Like it's someone like Ojabo, where it's like, he's got hurt recently. This is a guy that could miss maybe. I'm saying Williams, he could miss training camp, but
Sure.
I think you still have a chance. So that's really the only guy I think because he fits both the speed need, right, and the age thing as well. That's the only guy that if he fell to you, I would make me consider otherwise. But I would certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, you certainly aren't wrong in the fact that the odds are in your favor that one of those guys won't fall to you. So you might as well execute that trade right now if that's what Houston wants.
Last one. A couple ESPN insiders have mentioned that both A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf could be had for the right price. You interested in trading a first-round pick for either of those guys?
I mean, I think both of those guys are worthy of a first-round pick for sure.
It's just you have to turn around and pay them. It's basically doing the Amari Cooper trade again.
Except you may feel differently about those players than you do.
Right. It's the same type of thing. You're getting those guys going into the contract year. Actually, it's a little different. It'd be like trading for Amari going into that, was it 2019 season, right? Because Amari had a year option. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that should be explored. I mean, like at this point, you got to get talent there. You can't rule out avenues. And even if it's just about, look, with that situation with both of those guys, right? Like you have control of their contracts for another 2 years. So
1 year, because they were both second-round picks.
Oh, that's right. Of course. Yes.
That makes it a little bit more challenging.
It makes it a little bit more challenging, but I still
pay those guys, right?
I still think that you could play, have them play on 1-year deals and then to work on the contract in season while you're still having a very cheap rookie deal, so and that can make it palatable. Again, this and next year are really the last 2 years that you really are like with the cap stuff because you're still trying to recover from the COVID reduction. So if they could figure out a way to get them and then say, hey, we'll pay you, but the money's going to come in 2023 and 2024, I think that's doable, and it certainly would be a good way to add talent to the top of your receiving core.
Which one do you like better for Dallas? I think I probably like A.J. Brown better because he's a more dynamic after the catch.
More versatile player, I think.
Yeah.
I think with DJ Metcalf, I mean, there's been a lot of hand-wringing by folks saying that how dare you guys say that he couldn't run, in routes and stuff like that. I actually think that DK Metcalf is kind of proven to be exactly what we all thought he was. I mean, he's a deep player. He thrives at that. He's a physical force, but I'm not trying to, have him run quick slants or, like kind of things that are going to require him to use multiple moves. So I think with AJ Brown, you get kind of a physical after the catch presence. Exactly. I mean, frankly, if they have interest in Treylon Burks, AJ Brown is Treylon Burks, maybe literally on steroids. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I mean, as far as like guy that we talked about hitting the easy button, right? Get the ball to AJ Brown on a slant and just see if the DBs can tackle him. That sounds like hitting the easy button to me.
Terry McLaurin also available for a first round pick.
I don't think Washington would do that. I mean, if they did, I would. I mean, all day long, and I'd take him above those other two guys because I think that Terry McLaurin can do anything. Like I think I hate it, but I think he may be the best wide receiver in the division. And I mean, he's very, very, very good.
I think I'd still lean AJ Brown, but the point remains. All right, so just really quickly, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but. The 30 visits have come out for the Cowboys, and I know you saw the list. Drake London, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, Quay Walker, Devin Lloyd. Was there anything shocking to you when you looked at the list of players?
I think there was a couple different things that were surprising. I mean, I think that sometimes we have a problem with kind of looking at that whole thing weird, right? We look at it like, uh, I think that the 30 visits are always people that they're interested in some degree, one form or another. I think the issue becomes whether or not their first round picks or not, because a lot of these guys you see on this list are way down on the
Right.
potential draft stock. So I think that they use some of it to kind of confirm the high end guys to see if they like them, but then they also use it to kind of just gather information on some of these down roster folks. I will say that it's interesting to me that we saw a lot of centers there. And then that combined with the talk from Stephen Jones makes me really think that left guard may not be the only position that they're looking to try to upgrade in the offensive line in this coming draft season. So that was really interesting.
What about
Obviously
Charles
that I mean, I think that what's happening is that they're reacting to, I'm wondering if Penning going up is causing Cross to fall down, and they're just looking at the kind of reading the tea leaves and saying, well, we need to make sure we have a good handle on this guy if he falls to us, because there is a potential if he falls to us. Charles Cross to me falls under that category of blinking red light, like you can't ignore if he gets to you, right? Like if he fell to 24, I think you have to find a way to ignore your offensive guard and wide receiver kind of mandate at 24, and then you have to take him, because he's a top 15 player at a position that you are going to need in the future, and as a guy that if he reaches his potential could be an elite left tackle in the NFL. So I think that there are a couple of guys that they may think there's an opportunity for them to fall to the Cowboys at 24, and they're kind of doing their due diligence in case that does happen.
Yeah, the rest of it really wasn't surprising to me. A couple linebackers in there, no day 2 or day 3 receivers. That was the only thing that was a little bit shocking, but other than that, pretty much what we expected. A lot of the same guys that we talked about throughout this entire process. So nothing super surprising.
Yeah, it feels like with the second day 2 receivers, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not targeting day 2 receivers. They just may have the information they need for those guys already. But I do agree that it doesn't, if you're trying to read tea leaves on positions and where things are going, it's kind of all over the place. It feels like they are targeting positions, but at multiple different points in the draft. So, it's really, again, there is definitely a way to read too much into these.
Yes.
But I think that, it is good to kind of have these names to see some of the maybe down roster folks that they may be interested in, or at least that they're doing investigative work on.
All right, let's take one more quick break to tell you guys about Built Bar. This time of year, almost everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not us. We are sticking to ours to eat better thanks to Built Bar. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, 100% real chocolate, with most Built Bars containing only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar, which has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Plus, they have so many great flavors, including mint brownie, coconut and almond. And the new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious, and they got new flavors coming out all the time. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 at built.com. Get LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, it's a mock draft Monday, and as always, we go over the mock draft from Locked On NFL Draft. And this time, our guy Crocker has the Cowboys selecting Boy Mafi, a defensive end from Minnesota, somebody who we haven't talked about a lot. So not drafting an offensive lineman early, not drafting a wide receiver, but Mafi, who is an athletic freak. Do you think there's any chance that we get a surprise pick like that, or do you think it's pretty much locked in left guard, wide receiver?
I would be surprised. I mean, I certainly, I don't know that I have an issue with the player. I think he's kind of been moving up boards, and I think kind of bottom of the first is something that wouldn't be surprising for a guy that is a pass rusher that's on the rise, right?
Yep.
I think for the Cowboys, like, I just have a hard time believing he's not a blinking red light.
No,
Like he's a
no.
guy who has made it up to the bottom of the second round, and value would not be shocking if you saw him picked in the bottom of the bottom of the first round.
Yes.
But having said that, he's not like a guy that, like, if he arrives at 24, you're stop. It's not like what I just mentioned with like Cross, right? Where you just drop everything and you're drafting this guy. He's not the blinking red light, you know? So would I be surprised? I probably would be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked because obviously they have a slight need there. And he is a talented guy. I just think that, I would be surprised more likely because I feel like there are definitely should be other guys.
There's going to be better players there
that would be a better fit and better nexus of value versus what they want. Right.
All right. Let me ask you this. Does Drake London count as a blinking red light? Somebody that pretty routinely on the consensus board as the top 7 or 8 player. Cowboys did meet with him. Is he somebody that you have to take if he falls to 24?
I think he is a priority pick for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, I just actually watched London this weekend. And, I think if you haven't watched London, it's easy to kind of hear from the outside on who he is and think of,
you think of the big stiff
Treadwell or but
he's
not that guy.
No.
He's not that guy. Like he can really move. He can change direction. He moves extremely well for a guy as large as he is. And he's agile. So I think, so I think that Drake London is a guy that, if he came down to 24, I think you're looking at it for sure. Simply because I think he's a talent and at a position that you really, really need. I mean, much like Charles Cross, right? He might be the kind of Charles Cross of the receiver core, if you want to look at it that way, because he's a physical specimen who's got skills, who's got skins, who is falling for reasons that, I don't know why Drake London would be falling. Maybe because that type of receiver is, maybe he's not. Maybe it's because receivers of that type are not as fashionable nowadays.
Sure.
But I think he can. He's not like those other guys.
I saw somebody today compare him to Michael Thomas, and that actually makes way more sense than some of the other comps I've seen where he's Keyshawn Johnson or Mike Williams.
Plexico Burris before he got shot. Yeah.
I don't really think he's like that. I think he plays smaller than what his size is, but not in a bad way.
He can.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the key, right? Is a lot of those big guys can't play like that. I think he has a small ball game.
They're stiff, right? Yeah. I don't feel like he has stiff hips or anything like that, right? He can get in and out of his breaks just fine.
Yeah, he gets low. He has good leverage. I think he can do the big bully ball thing. He can do that. That's just not that's not exclusively his game. He has more to his game than that.
Yeah, he really wins by route running in a big catch radius, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a pretty good route runner for being almost 6'4".
He can get separation, and then on top of that, while getting just a little bit of separation with that big body, that's really the issue with the guys like, again, we keep throwing in Treadwell, but all these kind of first round big body wide receivers that struggled in the NFL early, right? Is that your thought was like, oh, he doesn't need to get open. He's big. Get him the ball. He just needs. London can actually produce separation, and on top of that is big. So I think that's a major difference than some of these guys that are don't worry about whether he's open or not, just throw the ball.
Yeah, he doesn't have to only play above the rim, right?
Yeah,
I actually saw somebody compare him to Keenan Allen, which makes a lot of sense because Keenan Allen's very similar in size. But I kind of feel like they win the same way. They're not overly fast, but they know how to get open, and they've got a big catch radius.
Almost as Brian, kind of like in the sense that he has an over the rim game, but on top of that, he also has the get the ball to him quick yak game aspect to his game as well, right?
I'm still confused as to what the Cowboys are trying to do at receiver. Are they trying to get guys that are more dynamic after the catch? Are they trying to get speed? Are they trying to get bigger? I really don't know. It's one of the.
I think they're trying to diversify their team, right? Like, I think that's it. I mean, I think the issue with Cooper at times was that Cooper and Lamb were too similar of players, and I think that my general take on building a wide receiver core, and I'd love to hear your take, is I think the whole basketball thing, right? Yeah, not NBA anymore because they've changed that, but like you need like different players that have different skill sets, and I think that's so they're looking at the big guys like Drake London. They're also looking at the small guys, speed guys, because they don't really have either of those two players. They kind of have the guy that's in the middle of that.
And I think like the Chiefs are a good example. I think the Chiefs realized last year they had all speed and they ended up needing more size at points and they just didn't have it, right? When they needed a 3rd and 3 and they needed somebody to catch the ball across the middle, they didn't have anybody. And even there was a play against the Bengals right before halftime. They were in the red zone. They were at like the 3-yard line. Their go-to play was pitching the ball to Tyreek Hill like 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And hey, go try to outrun everybody to the red zone or the end zone. I think they wanted a more diverse,
more options.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys are trying to do something very similar this offseason.
Agree.
All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tomorrow we'll answer your Twitter questions. Landon and I are going to watch some more tight ends this week that could potentially be options for the Cowboys. I don't know, Landon. Sounds like maybe 2nd round for you, 3rd round for me. We'll talk about it.
Well, we'll see. I'm not putting rounds on guys, but yes, I certainly.
Okay. There's one tight end that you like a lot. Weird. We'll save it.
Yeah.
Make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. Follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.